Well, hey, look at you being all diligent. I mean, we're like seconds away from recording our recap of episode 3, and you were in the middle of watching episode 3 for the first time?
No, for the ninth.
Why are you watching this episode so many times?
So whenever I watch something, I binge it. Like, I binge it. The first episode, I watched it like 10 times. The second episode, probably 10 times as well. This is like my ninth run through of just watching it again, just because I enjoy it.
And before we get into the said episode, may I commend you on your shirt? It is a very oceany Hawaiian vacation type of vibe. And it's kind of ironic because you and I are both on the East Coast and it's the holiday season. So the weather is anything but Hawaiian vibes.
Yes, it is terribly cold right now. And I was like, let me put on something festive, something fun.
Yeah, it's like so you have a blue shirt and it's just covered with these beautiful white palm tree kind of leaves. Just think of like a palm tree that you would see in like California or Florida, except these are all white palm tree leaves. It's really beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my favorite t-shirt.
Yeah, and it's giving you the positive tropical vibes to recap an episode that aired in October. So here we go. Episode 3 of season 1 of Family Matters, short story. Before we get into it, I mean, is there a new character that you're introducing yourself as this week?
So today I will be Reginald Bell Johnson. Okay, just a quick little snippet. You know, when you want something or you're like into something, all of a sudden that thing is like famous and everybody else you know is talking about it. That's what's happening now with Family Matters. Reginald Bell Johnson, this whole time I did not realize, has been a character on a new anime I've been watching called Invincible. It came out like 2 years ago and the new season got released, I think like 2 weeks ago. And episode 2, the main character goes to Reginald Bell Johnson High School and he's graduating. And Reginald Bell Johnson gives the commencement speech.
Wow. So did the producers specifically think of Reginald Bell Johnson and they were lucky enough to get him to voice this character?
I have no idea. I have only made this recognition about 3 hours ago and did not get too much into the research of it. But this whole time in the first season, he's going to Reginald Bell Johnson High School. And they never mention anything about Family Matters. They don't talk about cops, none of that. And then it didn't hit me until like a brick a couple of hours ago as I'm watching the new episode. I'm like, that's Reginald Bell Johnson. And I'm like, what is happening here?
Oh my God. So that anime, they really are into their obscure references, maybe, you know, references that maybe a lot of people would not be commonly saying, because, you know, as great as Reginald Bell Johnson is as Carl Winslow, I mean, he doesn't get the pop culture referencing that he deserves in 2023.
Right. And now he's a full high school in a TV show about time travel and different dimensions. And in every dimension, the character goes to Reginald Bell Johnson High School, which I just think is so cool.
Oh, my God. So the episode that we're recapping here, I think there were some good Carl moments. The original air date is October 6, 1989. Again, it's called Short Story. Written by the creators of the show, William Bickley and Michael Warren. They wrote the pilot episode. Directed by Joel Zwick, who also directed the pilot. So he's coming back for the third episode. And, a 1.6 million viewership bump from episode 2. Episode 3, 22.6 million viewers. So it looks like more people are finding our dear, delicious Family Matters, Andrew.
They are. People are getting over the trauma of Shadow Judy. And now we've gotten Judy established for 2 episodes in a row. So people are ready.
Shadow Judy, aka Valerie Jones as Judy Winslow. I think we still see the back of her in the opening credits of this episode. So I don't know. I mean, it may be a mixed thing. Maybe some people are getting over it, and then others are just like, "Oh my God, PTSD! Shadow Judy, she's right there in the opening credits."
She's there. She makes a little cameo here where her like energy seeps back in for 2 seconds, but I think people are understanding they're safe now.
All right, let's get into the Hulu synopsis if you're streaming on Hulu. The Winslow family members have mixed reactions when they realize they are characters in a story Rachel has sold to a magazine. So obviously a Rachel-centered story. Before we get into it, Andrew, what are your overall thoughts on this episode? What did you think?
So I really like this episode. I love a good episode where it's like a character is reading all of the other characters or like subtweeting the other characters with whatever they're doing. And everyone's like, how dare you feel this way about me?
It is a kitchen table utensils cold open. We have Eddie, Laura, and Judy. They're putting the utensils on the kitchen table, assumingly for a family meal. Judy tells Eddie, forks on the right. Eddie plays dumb guy like, oh, God, that's right, because we're all right-handed. And I don't appreciate that discrimination as a left-handed person, Andrew.
You are a rarity, John. You are like an alien that is full of substance and knowledge. So I admire your left-handedness.
Oh, my God. Stop that. You remind me of my parents. Like my dad, because, I'm like, I think the only left-handed person in a right-handed family. My dad growing up would always remind me, hey, Bill Clinton, there's been some presidents that have left-handedness, and that means that you're a smart guy. And I think that's just like a special way of saying, oh, you're a unique individual.
It's a very nice way of saying it. Like, look at where your left-handedness can land you. The office of the president.
All right. So we have Laura is, responding to Eddie's dumbness about like, oh, yeah, we're right-handed. And she is like, no, genius. When I say left, I mean left was right, which kind of confuses me the way Laura was explaining it. So I think for once I'm on the side of Eddie being understandably dumb here.
Yes, I'm completely on Eddie's side for this one. All I know is you start with the bigger utensils and work your way to the smaller ones as you eat.
Yeah, when Laura and Judy are just like, oh, no, left is right, left is left, left is right. It's like, oh, my God, you're making my head spin. I need some Advil right now.
It's like when people say, no, you're right. And I'm like, right is the same for everybody, okay?
And then Rachel enters the kitchen with pizza for dinner, and Eddie is relieved because that means they can eat with their hands. Some people may think like, oh, if you just have food that is all hands all the time, you may be a trashy kind of person, maybe a trashy bachelor, but hey, you're saving yourself on washing dishes.
I prefer to eat with my hands. Mashed potatoes, boom.
You really like eat it with your hands like you're a 2-year-old?
If I want to, it's my food. I like it. Like a little mashed potatoes, a little gravy, and just with your finger. Oh my gosh. It's a mess, but it's delicious.
The only time that I want to see mashed potatoes on my hands is if I'm starting a food fight.
Okay, I can see that. I'm a mashed potato ball. I'm there for it.
Which I always wanted to get into as a kid when I saw all the 90s TV shows and movies. But now that I grow up, I'm like, holy crap, that is the most wasteful way to use food.
My problem whenever I would see the food fights on TV, it was always food that looked good. If it looked bad, I would not care. But it was always good looking food.
Yeah, mashed turnips and bacon from the other episode? Sure, let's do that. But if it's like, I don't know, $500 pizza that is so elegant, then no, I'm putting that in my mouth.
Right.
All right, so then we get into the full opening theme that ends the cold open. And like we said, Shadow Judy, the original Judy Winslow, is still there, even though she's been gone since the first episode. And then we go into scene 2. Laura is giving endless mail to Mama Winslow in the living room. Carl asks if anything is for him. Laura takes a beat and then keeps saying, Grandma, to indicate that, the mail keeps coming in for Mama Winslow. And Laura takes a moment to see some important mail. Carl says that must be for him. And then Laura continues, Grandma, more mail for Mama Winslow. It is revealed that Mama Winslow has mail from the First Lady at the time that this episode came out, First Lady of the United States, Barbara Bush. And she looks at the mail surprised because she hasn't heard from Barbara since she moved, assuming they're talking about the White House. And again, I'm asking myself when I'm looking at this, how does Mama Winslow have this background with the royal family, the First Lady of the United States? Before she became First Lady, I guess they were friends. And then she's just suddenly moving in with her son in suburban Chicago. I mean, I don't know if you are okay with not knowing the in-between answers anymore, Andrew, but I still need to know.
I'm okay with not knowing because I've made my own theory that Mama Winslow and Barbara Bush met when she was having her wild years in Vegas. They were having a good little time. Barbara hadn't met Bush at that time. And then he came around and they started dating. And then Barbara was like, girl, we can't be friends right now because I'm around this man. And they had a little falling out, but then they got back together.
And, if Barbara and Mama Winslow are having a good time in Vegas, I wonder, what did Barbara do in Vegas that we don't speak of anymore? Because obviously what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Barbara Bush, for all we know, could have sucked a magician's toes like crazy.
It could happen. She's got some dirt on her. She knows.
Oh, yes. She's got some dirt that she put on the magician's toes, and then she licked them off. Licked them.
Like that letter that she got was an NDA.
All right, so Laura finally has mail for Carl. Oh, terrific. It's a water bill. And it's also revealed that Rachel has a letter, and Carl wants to give it to her himself to feel important. And Carl gives it to her in the kitchen where Harriette also is. Rachel is excited to receive a letter from Sci-Fi Magazine since she sent them a short story she wrote. Carl says he doesn't believe it. Harriette tells Carl he hasn't even read the short story. Carl is talking about the water bill and wondering if they got a swimming pool and no one told him. So right away, I'm wondering, are they going to do that Carl hates bills nonsense that they did the last episode? But I think they briefly touched it. I don't know if it was a major theme in this episode.
It wasn't a major theme. There are a couple of recurring jokes about it, but it wasn't like a major, like, this is what bills is about.
There goes Carl with the bills again. Carl gives the bill to Harriette to look, and she agrees it's too high. And Carl says, this much water has not been used at SeaWorld. Yay. I've never been to SeaWorld. I want to see those dolphins.
John, don't go to SeaWorld. Just like find like some like nature preservative or where like the hippies are. SeaWorld, you might as well be like a slavery farm for like whales.
And when I said that, I automatically realized that there were like some controversial stories about SeaWorld. I don't know the detail about them, but I just figured I'd put it out there and see if SeaWorld was forgiven, but it clearly is not from what it seems like.
My problem isn't with SeaWorld. My problem is the fact that their own issues outside of the fish. It's just like, I don't think fish want to live in a tank. Like, it just seems so small for them.
Yeah. I mean, they're out in the open in the ocean. I agree. The tank seems very, very contained, Andrew. All right, so Rachel is blue. She looks depressed looking at the letter because it's been revealed her story was rejected. Carl tells Rachel that that's sorry to hear and that it's been a tough day for both of them. And then enter Eddie coming in to tell his dad the great news. He's washed the car. Carl looks at him incredulously. You washed the car? And then looks down at his water bill. With water? Yes. What are we going to wash the car with? V8 juice?
You get a nice little shine. I wouldn't be mad at it.
And the car is healthy with vegetables. Think about that, too.
Boom. You hit somebody, you hit them with a V8. Oh, my God.
Wait. Oh, wait. Is that like a car joke that you were making there?
Yes. So have you ever seen the commercials you get hit with a V8?
No, I've never seen it. No.
Oh, well, in your spare time, anybody who's watching, listening, go watch a V8 commercial from the 90s. It was full of violence of hitting people in the head because they didn't drink a V8. And it was a dumb decision. And so now if you put that on a car, you hit somebody with a V8, don't hit people with cars.
That's the moral of the story. All right, so wash the car with water. Boy, why would you do that? Eddie says confusingly, because you told me to, Dad. Carl says he told him to 2 weeks ago when they could afford it. Eddie says he doesn't believe this. He does something, and all of a sudden, he's in trouble and storms out. Carl says he's in big trouble while looking at the bill and follows Eddie to the living room, saying next time, ask him before he does something he told him to do. Harriette tells Rachel in the kitchen she's sorry her story was rejected. Rachel says it was a great idea about a trucker with a whole lot of tattoos. And one day he notices his tattoos are changing. Finally, he realizes they are not tattoos at all, but aliens with really low self-esteem. Andrew, what would you think about this guy? Is this a guy that you would want to be friendly with? Or is this a guy where you're just like, whoa, let me go to this other room right now?
100%. We are going to a bar. We're going to have drinks. We're going to talk about the depression his tattoos feel. I'm obsessed.
So is it like a crazy people equal crazy hot sex kind of thing? Is that where your mind is going? Or is it just a friendly thing at the bar?
Because I'm afraid that this thing is contagious that's on his skin, we're not hooking up. But we will definitely sit and talk and have a few drinks because I feel like there's some good stories from these aliens.
All right. Very reasonable. And you know what? In terms of this book idea from Rachel, I would buy it. You know, Rachel has some out there ideas, most people would say, but because they're out there, it fascinates me.
It sounds, just imagine the story that could come from any of the things she's already said that she would make a story about. It would be really fun and interesting to watch.
All right, so Harriette says, and Rachel says she's doing a Stephen King sort of thing. Harriette says she shouldn't be wasting her time writing about truckers and tattoos. She says Rachel should be writing about things that she knows about. Rachel thinks for a moment with the facial expression of, I think that's a good idea. But you know what? I'm still into the truckers and tattoos idea, Harriette. Be an encouraging older sister. Encourage the strange ideas.
See, Harriet, this is a moment where I feel like she should listen to Rachel because Rachel is the one who's going to think of something that is going to blow everybody's mind. She could have created Sharknado.
This is true. And there were like 15 of those Sharknado movies. So imagine how much money Rachel would have made by now.
Right? Harriet needs the support.
Harriet the kitchen faucet and tries to turn the water on, but cannot. She yells, Carl! Carl comes in and says, don't panic, while holding a wrench. Carl then exclaims that the water will be offered just 4 hours a day, which I think could work, Andrew, as long as no one is in the house while the water is off.
Yes. If nobody's in the house while the water's off, it could work. But then I'm trying to wrap my head around this since I've watched this episode. And I'm like, okay, even if you turn off the water for 4 hours a day, when you come home, the same amount of water is going to be used. It's about the volume, not the time. So would this actually work?
You know what? If that logic you're saying is correct, probably not. And shame on Carl for being a so-called stereotypical dad that knows about conserving water and conserving money. Clearly, you should be the dad of the Winslow family, Andrew.
I mean, I'm just saying, if it's yellow, let it mellow. That's the rule when it comes to droughts. So just don't flush the toilet and boom.
Rachel and Harriet look at him with confusion. Carl says they can all live with that and to think of the money that they'll be saving. Harriet says with that classic attitude that she knows how more money can be saved. Nobody eats. And then, of course, that gets Carl's attention. He's thinking about the consequences of not eating and then says determinedly that he will turn the water back on as he leaves the kitchen. Oh, those fact jokes for Carl. They're going to be coming for the next 9 seasons.
You know, some of those jokes aren't bad. Like this whole scene, the setup of it with Harriet and Rachel breaking up the collard greens in the kitchen, getting ready to cook. It gives you that like early Thanksgiving family vibes, like issue happening. So the water coming off, I'd be like, okay, we got to make a fat joke for this one because you did something that's going to affect everybody who's eating this food.
We move on to the next scene where we're again in the kitchen. Rachel is in the funk at the kitchen table. Laura comes in to greet her from outside with a backpack as if she's coming home from school. She's wearing a white shirt with flower patterns on them that reminds me of a comforter my sister had on our bed when we were kids. Did you see this shirt, Andrew?
I did. I immediately wrote in my notes when she first walked in that this is like typical early 90s, 80s kids fashion for school because it's just super cute. It's like this color black shirt with the flower print, and I just think it looks good.
And, the casual Christian girl vibes with that jean skirts, the white sneakers and socks. I was thinking, man, this takes me back to Miss Parker, my 4th grade teacher's wife, who I often saw back at the school that I went to that was also a Christian school, that was also a church. She was wearing jean skirts all the time with the socks and the little Mr. Rogers like delicate tennis sneakers. It was a look.
That was a look. You know, if you see somebody in a jean skirt, it's like, oh, you are with Jesus. He walks with you because you have that skirt on.
But are they really committed to Jesus, or are they putting up a front and then you realize they're actually a freak?
You know what? It probably is that because, again, it's a jean skirt, which means there's a zipper in there.
They call it Jesus freak for a reason. That literally just came to my mind. I was like, wait a minute, Jesus freak. That makes sense. Rachel asked Laura how school was, and Laura says she can get A's in her sleep. And the public school system is geared towards kids like Eddie. Laura being mean to her older brother. So it's been established that Laura is the smart younger sister. Eddie's the dumb older brother. We've seen this in sitcoms many, many times before. And I feel like that was Theo and Vanessa Huxtable's dynamic in The Cosby Show. I feel like the early episodes, it was like, oh yeah, Vanessa, the middle sister that's younger than Theo and seems to have her head together. And then Theo's just like, yeah, I want girls and my Michael Jackson poster. That's all I care about.
Yes, it is a dynamic that exists in real lives in every comedy I have ever seen.
All right, so Laura asks Rachel how her story is coming. Rachel says it's not, and she keeps getting a lot of ideas, but none of them amount to anything. She's sort of blocked, writer's block. That is a very common thing. Carl raises his voice from somewhere in the house. All right, I want everybody in the living room right now on the double. And then Rachel says, uh-oh, it's Aquaman. I guess this is in reference to his water bill obsession.
Mm-hmm. And Carl, that scene, so when I heard him shout all right, at first I had to like rewind it 14 times because I'm like, did he say all right or he said all the right? For some reason, the line is all the right. And then when they come into the living room, he's like, all right. He says it again, like knowing he messed up the line.
It could have possibly been all the right, as in all the right-handed people come over here, which I think is the whole family.
That could be it. That sounds like a very scary thing. I would feel like I'm immediately in trouble if all the right-handed people have to go somewhere.
Rachel and Laura go to the living room where we see Carl, Harriette, and Mama Winslow. Carl has his hands on his hips defiantly with his policeman uniform on. That, you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if this is the same uniform that Reginald wore as the cop in Die Hard. I mean, does it seem pretty similar?
It seems very similar. And I've seen police uniforms. They are never that clean. So he does not do a job for the police where he gets dirty anymore.
All right. So Carl says, all right, who did it? Angrily, he wants to know who left the sprinkler on all day because the front yard looks like a rice paddy. What is a rice paddy? I got to look this up. I mean, well, unless you know, you can tell me what a rice paddy is.
So a rice paddy, imagine a garden that's flooded with water and the rice grows under the water. So it honestly looks like a little lake that you've made yourself, and they're typically stacked on top of each other. In China is where you typically see them, but it's just a piece of land that is just flooded with water, and the rice grows under the flooded water.
So, stupid question. Rice grows from the ground? I didn't know that. I thought that rice was like some thing that just kind of came from cooking on the stove. Maybe there was like some kind of like rice seed that just like grew into a bunch of rice on the stove. Man, I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for this, but I had no idea until now that rice comes from the ground. I guess that makes sense. It's a grain and grain does come from the ground, but wow, my mind is blown.
Yeah, rice grows just like a little plant. Don't feel bad. I originally thought rice came from eggplants. I thought it was like inside the eggplant and you break it open and then you have all the rice. I don't know why I thought that, but that's where I thought rice originally came from.
All righty. Well, Mama Winslow says to not look at her because she doesn't do outside work. So she's trying to escape blame for the whole sprinkler situation. Laura says she didn't turn on the sprinkler. Harriette says not her. Rachel says she hasn't done anything because she's blocked. Yeah. I guess that. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you have to write something, Andrew, and you have a writer's block and you're so stuck in your writer's block that nothing else in the world really matters.
I've been in those scenarios and I would not even eat. I'm like, I can't think of anything, so I'm not eating today.
Yeah, starvation. That's going to suddenly produce an idea.
Right. Look, either you think of something or you don't eat. You'll figure it out.
So Carl asks, well, who could it be? Who turned on the sprinkler? Eddie comes in the front door and innocently says hi to everybody with a smile and a tealish, I think it was teal, a tealish blue-green shirt. Reminds me of a shirt that I have. I have a lot of bland, solid colored shirts from a brand called Just George. So yeah, when Eddie wore that shirt, I was like, oh, Eddie, you stole my shirt from more than 30 years ago.
Don, that means you're on trend. You got fashion down to a mark now.
I guess. Well, Carl has a huge fake smile on his face when he greets Eddie, and you can tell Carl is that smile detects, oh, he's about to explode in a minute, but he's trying to contain himself. And Reginald, of course, so funny. He's, kind of putting his arm over Eddie and like, Edward, as he physically comes over to Eddie to give him a hug that we know is not genuine. Carl puts his arm around Eddie with a frightened, insane smile, asking if he has turned on the sprinkler today. Eddie innocently says, yes, he did. He turned it on this morning and without even being asked. And I just think it's adorable that Eddie is just like, yeah, I can do something all by myself. He's just so oblivious.
He really is. And it's so nice to see, like, he's just like this innocent little puppy. He's like, oh, I did what I needed to do. And it's just going to blow up in his face. Poor Eddie.
Yeah. Daddy, I put my shoe on today and I am so proud. Carl says with a forced arm grip push with each word, but you forgot to turn it off. He might have not said it that way, but whatever. You get the point. Eddie says to Carl he got him there because he wasn't told that part. He wasn't told about turning the sprinkler off. I guess Eddie may have a point there. Carl lets his smile go and tells Eddie the body is 65% water. The human body, 65% water. And if the family comes up short, Eddie will be the first to go. Harriette tells Carl he's getting out of hand with this water bill anxiety. And Carl incredulously asks, out of hand? And says he has to rent scuba gear to get the evening paper. What an image.
I would love my neighbor. If my neighbors did something like that, I would want to know them and I would hang out with them 24/7.
Honestly, I would write a story. Rachel should look at that person and come up with a short story idea. I mean, a guy who's just reading the evening paper in scuba gear, think of how many ideas you could base off of that.
Tons, because now I want to know where he got the scuba gear from, why he has it, and what's so important in this newspaper that you're willing to risk your life to get it.
So Carl makes an order to the whole family. Nobody uses water in the house without written permission from him. The family all talking at the same time, telling Carl in their own way how that's a very awful idea. And then we cut to Mama Winslow looking into the distance, asking if she wonders if George and Barbara Bush have an extra room. Look, I mean, Mama Winslow, if you know the freaking president and the first lady from back in the day, if you guys have memories together, I would think that Barbara Bush at least gave you her personal number and you could stay at the Lincoln room for the night.
Right. Something like stay in like the tunnels beneath the White House. Some places got to be safe for her to stay.
Carl, Harriette, and Eddie, they're arguing over each other as they go into the kitchen. Before Laura heads into the kitchen, she tells Rachel behind her that if she wants to write a story, write it about this family because people love stories about domestic violence. All right.
When I heard that, I was like, whoa, I didn't pick up on this the first time I saw this episode. But, now that's not a joke that aged well, but it was still kind of funny.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, 2023 Family Matters probably would not have written that in. But 1989, sure, let's joke about domestic violence, even though that's not even anywhere near close to what this family is doing. I mean, verbal arguments, yeah, but domestic violence, that's another level.
Well, John, we haven't gotten to, Judy and how she disappeared, so we don't know.
Judy was the subject of domestic violence. Is that why she disappeared in like season 4?
Maybe it could be a secret to the episode. We don't know. I'm not speculating that, but I'm just saying family disappearance is still something we should be worried about.
Wow. All right. We took it deep there. Carl and Harriette, they murdered Judy from domestic violence, and then she never returned again.
Oh, Judy, we love you.
Rachel follows Laura into the kitchen with the facial expression of, oh, Laura may be onto something. Like she actually thinks, you know what? My niece may give me a spark of an idea based on this apparently domestic violence situation. And then that moves us into the next scene where we're in the living room. Mama Winslow is sewing and Carl comes in excitedly to tell her how good water bill tracking has been. Carl has checked the meter now every day for the past 2 weeks, and water consumption is finally under control. Mama Winslow says that's good, and finally, maybe she can firm up her waterbed, which I will never understand how a waterbed at one point became a source of comfort for everybody. I was like looking into it, and it was in fact popular in the 80s when this episode of Family Matters came out, and then gradually, as we got into the 90s, it just faded away. Did you ever have a waterbed or ever think about getting one?
I didn't have one myself, but when I was younger, one of my best friends had a waterbed. So anytime we'd have a sleepover, we'd sleep in his waterbed. It was the most uncomfortable thing in the world. I didn't like it.
So did you wake up with like massive physical pain, the joints dislodged? Like, what was that feeling like when you woke up from it?
Like everything was just sore all the time. Like I like a firm bed. I want to feel like I'm sleeping on a brick wall. I hate like soft things. And a waterbed is like you kind of sink into it. You kind of feel like you're drowning. You kind of feel like Jack from Titanic, except without the cold.
My wife, Tony, and I, so we slept on her queen bed for a good while. And that is one of those, soft, plushy, all over the place beds. So that was terrible. And then at a certain point, we just said, you know what, screw it. I have a firm mattress that I used to use when I was working and living in upstate New York for a little while. It is a full-size mattress. So, a bit smaller than a queen, but let's do it. And it's much better. I just have to deal with her always almost knocking me off the bed because she takes up like 80% of the space with her pillows and her arms and the cats and an extra pillow as her friendly, huggy, stuffed animal pillow to her left. It's insane, Andrew.
Tony, I know your struggle. I sleep with 14 pillows on my bed and a pregnancy pillow. I love them.
So the pregnancy pillow is the one that you hug with your stomach?
So the pregnancy pillow, it literally wraps around your whole body and like it comes to the back of you and then you can hug the front of it. It is the best type of pillow to have.
Laura and Judy, they come in through the front door with Laura holding mail and Judy saying she is sick of this and she wants some of that mail and she wants it now. Laura says, okay, here, take this. Judy says, this is junk mail. Laura says she's new in this profession and has to start at the bottom. And Judy says she was born at the bottom as she struts her way up the stairs with junk mail. And all I kept thinking was, wow, a kid her age really finding sorting junk mail exciting. I don't know if you found that exciting when you were Judy's age.
I did. I would always get the mail and all the junk mail. My parents would let me have it. And I would open all these random things. And I'm like, ooh, what is this? Like, did you ever see those coupon books where it's like you can order this crystal figurine for $200 and that would be like in the junk mail? I would always get the stuff like that and then got myself in trouble by ordering something before.
Wow. I mean, I was too busy just, watching TV and farting my ass off. I didn't really have much intelligence to be like, oh, yeah, let me get a coupon for this McDonald's burger or a coupon for a snake watch, a watch with a pet snake on it.
It was one of those things. Maybe it's just because my family was into coupons and all that stuff. If I could find the coupons in the junk mail, I could get whatever I got.
There we go. Well, you and Judy Winslow, you guys think alike. So we cut to the kitchen with Harriette, Rachel, and baby Richie. Rachel is playing with Richie in his baby seat, singing the song, you put your right foot in, you put your right foot out. But, you remember that expression that Richie gives? He kind of looks at Rachel with like a confused blank face, and Rachel gets it and she stops insecuringly while holding a teething ring. She tells her son Richie that this is a top-of-the-line teething ring. Richie refuses to put it in his mouth. Rachel gives up and tells Harriette Richie hates this thing. Harriette says she's doing it all wrong and comes over to Rachel and Richie. Rachel says it did not come with instructions. Harriette says, watch and learn, and she dips the teething ring in a little applesauce and feeds it to Richie, and he response to it. And it reminds me of my childhood, Andrew, where my mom, because I was so stubborn as like a 2 or 3 year old kid, like I didn't want to eat, fittingly enough, rice and vegetables and all that stuff. So my mom said, all right, I'm just going to mix in applesauce with the rice and vegetables and feed it to you. I still wouldn't eat it, even though I love applesauce. So I remember just about to take a nap, and I still had a ball of that rice, vegetables, and applesauce in my cheek, in my mouth. I just refused to swallow it, and I just ended up taking a nap with that ball of food still in my mouth.
Oh my gosh, you really did not want that.
Yeah. Did you have to have a certain food mixed into food that you didn't want to eat as a kid?
My grandmother would always tell us a story about the teething rings, that I wouldn't take my teething ring unless she dipped it in whiskey. And that was like the only time that I would actually use it. But now this is an old school thing. I don't think parents do it anymore. It's probably against the law. But when you're teething and your teeth were coming in, parents would rub some whiskey on your gums because it would numb your gums as a baby. At least that's what they thought. You were just getting your child drunk, so your child didn't care about the pain. And my grandmother would always tell us that story, that she would dip my teething ring in a little bit of whiskey, and then I would just chew on it and boom, be out like a light.
So is there a study that says that those babies are most likely going to be alcoholics?
You know what? There probably is a study. I can just tell you right now, I enjoy whiskey, so it's probably that.
It was probably from those baby years, right from the jump, and it just became a part of your being. I love that.
Yes. We didn't start with club soda, so we did well. We did good.
Laura comes into the kitchen announcing mail for Aunt Rachel. Laura is about to touch a plate of good-looking fried food, and Harriette quickly slaps her hand and tells her that is for dinner. Yeah, reminds me of my mom, when I was a kid. You could have a little piece of bread, but nope, we're not going to touch that hot chicken. Not yet. Wait until the family sits at the table.
My mom would do the same thing. She would always sit the chicken out first. And I'm like, why would you sit that there? That's what we want to eat.
Mm-hmm. And it wasn't always exciting, that rare moment when your parents would let you take a little piece of chicken and try it before the full spread that you could try at the family table.
Yes, it was like you got a cheat code. You're like, oh, yes, I get to try this before we sit down.
Right? All right, so Rachel excitedly tells Harriette the mail she received is a letter from the magazine where she sent her new short story. Rachel opens the letter, and Harriette is eager to see what they said. Rachel reveals her story has been sold, and both are very excited and hug each other. Harriette then asks if she's going to get a chance to read it. Rachel says she didn't want Harriette to see it until she knew it was good, and now she's going to get copies for everyone to read. Rachel asks Harriette if she can watch Richie. Harriette says, sure. Rachel quickly reminds him he needs changing, and thank you.
I love Rachel that she parents the way. She's like, figure it out. The baby's here.
Yeah. And you know what? I kind of understand Rachel, because that's kind of the advantage of living with a bunch of family members in the household. Every now and then you need a break. And it's like, oh, yeah, you take care of the kid.
Yeah, like, you know, he'll be fine. Just throw on SpongeBob. Boom, he's good.
SpongeBob didn't come out until like 1999, so I don't even know. So it wasn't even SpongeBob back then. It was like what, Looney Tunes?
Probably Looney Tunes or Sesame Street.
Harriette screams to Laura upstairs and tells her to get down to the kitchen because the baby needs changing. And I love how two experienced mothers are like, let's have the kids change the baby. It's bad, and it's annoying to change a baby when mothers are just like, oh, okay, I'm going to let the kid take this one.
You can't do it. I am with you, mothers. I have never changed a diaper, and I never will. I just can't do it.
Yeah. I mean, my wife and I want to have children someday. And am I looking forward to that? But in a way, with all the poo that we had to clean up from our dogs, that's sort of training. So I think we'll be okay.
You guys got this. You got this.
All right. Harriette is rocking a Cosby sweater in this scene. It's like a teal, blue, greenish sweater with a bunch of colorful rhombuses on it. And this is a thing that we're going to see a lot. I think like between Harriette and Laura, maybe Laura a little bit, but mostly Harriette. Harriette is really into sweaters with a lot of rhombuses on them.
She is into color blocking and shapewear. It's so freaking cute.
Yeah. I was like, look at you with your Cosby rhombus thing going on. And, the Cosby show was still on the air. It was still fairly popular. So maybe Harriette was, saying like, hey, I could be Cliff Huxtable, except female.
Yeah, she could be Cliffy Huxtable.
Clifferita, Huxtabilita.
Clifferita sounds like a stripper name.
Oh yeah, Clifferita, or like a Mexican dish that just like tastes so spicy and you just want to like eat it in like 80-degree weather in the Bahamas. I would love a Clifferita.
That actually sounds appetizing. I'd do that.
Scene 5. Here we go. We're in the kitchen again. A lot of kitchen happening in this episode. Judy, Laura, Mama Winslow, Carl, and Harriette are reading Rachel's short story with the same frowny facial expression. Rachel comes in happily asking the family what they think, except Eddie, for some reason. He wasn't in this scene, and I was just kind of, well, at first he wasn't in this scene, and I thought he wasn't in the whole scene. So I thought, like, oh, Eddie's so dumb that he's not able to read with everybody else. Like, that's what I was thinking at first, Andrew.
Never thought of that.
But he shows up at some point. We just have to wait for it. After Rachel's question, Carl and Mama Winslow look up to her with very notable frowns. Rachel's smile turns upside down, seeing their expressions. Carl tells Rachel that this story is about them. Rachel says innocently that it's not, and she made it up. Carl says the story is about a woman who moves in with her sister's family. The father's a cop, the mother works at a newspaper, and they live in a house with their 3 kids and a grandmother. Rachel says she knows that sounds like this family, but she just used them as a jumping off point. Mama Winslow says with a funny deadpan,
I don't think you jumped far enough.
The amount of deadpan, snappy lines that Mama Winslow has from, say, this episode to like episode 7, which is the latest one that I'm note taking. It's great. I mean, I think the writers they know that if you want like a very deadpan, sassy, serious, snappy attitude person who is basically an older Harriette, Mother Winslow.
Yes, she reminds me of so many Black grandmothers, including my own, that I know have met and been around, where it's just that little snappy wit, and then she'll come by and say, Jesus loves you, child.
Jesus apparently don't love you enough, child, with your ugly ass sweater. Like that shit. Like Mama Winslow probably would say something like that.
Probably would.
Oh, you want to jump off a cliff? Jump farther down. I don't know.
Okay, John, yours are getting good. I like it.
Mama Winslow tells Rachel she makes her seem pushy in the story and that she is not pushy. And of course, just as Carl is about to say, yeah, Mama Winslow cuts him off with his hand, telling him to hush up, Carl. Of course, she is pushy. Mama Winslow tells Rachel she wants to be taken out of the story. Rachel reacts incredulously. Mama Winslow. Carl says Rachel makes him out to be some kind of cheapskate, which is a word I haven't used in quite a while. I don't know when was the last time you used that word, Andrew.
Oh my gosh, I actually think like 2 days ago.
In reference to you or someone else?
In reference to me, because I'm a total cheapskate. I am cheap on everything.
Yeah. Once we close on our house in a few weeks, my wife and I, we are going to be the epitome of cheapskates. And there's nothing you can do about it, So if we have to do McDonald's every night to get by, then sure, why not?
John, download the app if you don't have the app. You get free stuff all the time through it.
There you go. I'm loving it. Mama Winslow says she got that part right. Laura says upsettingly to Carla and Mama Winslow that Rachel made her seem like some smart mouth know-it-all and then gives Rachel a cold stare. And she clearly proves she is a sassy smart mouth know-it-all because of how Laura delivered that line. Because I think it was like, oh, you make me seem like I'm some smart mouth know-it-all. Laura really got some fire in that. She really was taking after Harriette and Mama Winslow.
She's the little version of them, but just far snappier.
Rachel tells everyone it's just a little story for a magazine and that she doubts anyone they know will even read it. Judy asks, what about her? Because Rachel said she whines, and Judy whiningly says, I don't whine. As she leaves the kitchen, Rachel insists that it's not about her. Mama Winslow, way to go, Rachel. And I think she did that in the same delivery. Remember that way to go, Carl line from the other day?
Yes, she's done it in 2 episodes now. Way to go, Carl. And now she says Rachel. So I hope she does this for every character throughout the season. I would love that.
Rachel insists that she made it all up and hasn't anyone noticed the family is nothing like them because the people in the story have cable. That is the difference between the fictional family and the real family. It's 1989. They don't have cable yet, even though cable is like pretty much trending by this time.
I mean, they are not rich. Cable was still an expensive product back then.
Do you know if your family had cable back then?
We did not have cable. Okay, I'm laughing because this is where my cheapskateness started and why I watch everything on streaming services that you don't pay for. Because my dad, we had cable that was taken and rerouted from somebody else's house. And then things like pay-per-view movies and stuff, me and my brother, we could watch them in our television in our bedroom because we picked up the reception from the neighbor's house.
So this is like the precursor to stealing someone's Wi-Fi feed.
Yes.
All right, so in comes Eddie from upstairs who tells Rachel happily that he loves the story. Rachel is glad to know there's someone who believes it's fiction. Eddie is confused and says Rachel captured the real him, a guy who is great with the babes. Eddie looks up with an exaggerated, suave, macho satisfaction. Laura says that's the only part that is fiction. Again, mean Laura. Eddie says, oh, yeah, and lightly hits Laura in the head with the manuscript. Carl says rather dramatically to Eddie that he shouldn't be hitting nobody in the head because y'all are crazy enough as it is, even though it was a very light tap on the head. Carl made it seem like it was like the most, fittingly enough, domestic violence abuse tap on the head ever.
Right. It was so playful. And I'm like, this is a response that wasn't required for here.
Rachel tells Harriette that she hasn't said a word. She's a reasonable person and asks what she thought of the story. Harriette looks at Rachel for a moment, gets up from the table and asks, does she really want to know what she thinks of this story? Rachel looks frightened and says, maybe not. Harriette walks over to Rachel and says she thinks this story is about the two of them and how Rachel sees Harriette as this overbearing big sister who's always pushing Rachel around. Harriette says it's nice to know how Rachel really feels. Rachel insists to Harriette that it's just a little story. Harriette says with cocked pigeon head sass, well, your words speak louder than your words.
I like that. I like that. When I heard her say it, I immediately was like, oh, I don't know what she's saying, but I know she's mad. And then my favorite line of the episode comes up right after that.
Rachel looks confused and asks what that means. Harriette says,
she says, I don't know, I'm fired up, and just walks out because that is something I still say to this day.
All right, we go to the next scene. Again, in the kitchen. Why does every scene start in the kitchen? Rachel comforts Mother Winslow on the well-meaned intent behind her story, saying that this is how writers do it. They usually take someone they know in real life and use them as a mere foundation to build a fictional character. Mother Winslow says, as if she's getting the point. Rachel uses Hemingway as an example of a writer who used his friends for stories. Mother Winslow met Hemingway in Cuba once, and that he was all sizzle and no steak.
Oh, we met at this bar in Cuba, and we had a cute little time. We had Cuba Libres, and he was like very romantic and feely with her. And then when they got to the bedroom, it was like, oh, this is all I'm getting.
And that happens a lot with a certain amount of hot people. Like hot, whether it's men or women. I mean, their hotness is on such a high level that sometimes there's nowhere to go but down. You talk to them and you actually go to bed with them, and you're like, whoa, I had such high expectations, and now I'm left with nothing but disappointment.
Yeah, they're hot, and then they just starfish it.
At least one or two of these famous people that Mother Winslow knows can appear on Family Matters. That would be nice. I know it's not going to happen, but, if they could reboot the series just to have these famous people come by.
I would love it. Just a little snippet of AI Queen Elizabeth.
Carl comes into the kitchen and tells Rachel he convinced Harriette to talk to her and that she's going to have to do the rest. I guess Carl suddenly is not mad at Rachel anymore. Rachel seemed to do a good job of getting Carl and Mother Winslow on his side, or on her side. Rachel thanks Carl. Rachel asks Mother Winslow to excuse her, and Mother Winslow tells Rachel she'll be praying for her and gives her a kiss on the cheek. Rachel heads to the living room with Carl, where Harriette is seen on the center couch with arms crossed, clearly still mad at Rachel. Carl is wearing a striped bright blue shirt that reminds me of a yogurt.
It is an ugly shirt. It is very ugly. I was going to say, I know that shirt and the yogurt that made me think of was that Faye yogurt, I think is what it's called. And it's like from France, and it's supposed to be very classy, but it's just blue and white. It's very weird.
And this is not the first time that someone's fashion reminds me of a yogurt. I think Eddie has a fashion choice in a later episode that reminds me of like a Trix yogurt. So we'll get to that when we get to that. Carl tells Harriette he knows her and Rachel can straighten out this misunderstanding. You know, he kind of belabors the point a little. Rachel sits down and tells Harriette she's sorry and was just trying to do what was told of her and write about what she knows. So Carl immediately is in anxious excitement. See? All right. Now let's all go out and get some ice cream. Everything's fixed. But clearly things are not fixed. Harriette is still not satisfied. She says to Rachel she wants to ask her one thing. Did Rachel mean all of the stuff she wrote about Harriette? Rachel insists to Harriette it's not her. Henrietta is a fictional character. Carl again is like, see? Now let's go get that ice cream. The comical avoidance-based enthusiasm of Reginald VelJohnson. I mean, it kind of makes sense that he seems to be the most consistently funny character before what becomes the most consistently funny character throughout the series, Steve Urkel, because you combine Reginald's comic timing with Jaleel's comic timing. I could see why the writers were like, all right, this is going to be fucking magic.
Right. It's gold. You think about the two of them together, it's gold. And then I think about Carl. His character is a police officer. So his entire life outside of the house, he has to be in charge, authoritative, can't have any fun. So when he gets home, he's like, I'm shutting off my brain and I will be the funny person.
Harriette then pushes her further to Rachel, asking if she thinks Harriette controls her life like Henrietta does on the story. Rachel says, well, not all the time. Harriette asks shockingly what she means by not all the time. Rachel admits that sometimes Harriette does try to control her life. Harriette asks her to name one time. Rachel gives a ha and says she can name many times, like how Harriette tells her to dress, to do makeup, and even lectured her on how to give Richie a teething ring. We obviously have evidence of this, Andrew, which really made Rachel's hair stand on end. Harriette tells Rachel the standing hair would be a lot better than the way she's wearing the hair on her head now. Aww, kind of an insult. But what do you think about Rachel's hair versus Harriette's hair? Do you think, are you fascinated by the difference in tone and style as I am?
I am fascinated by it. I love it because it kind of matches their fashion trend. Harriette has this very demure but classic look with all of her looks she wears. Rachel is more like this fun festive, so I can see the differences in their hair of how they're styled. But I think they both look good.
From what I remember, Rachel has she has the curly brownish hair, and Harriette has sort of like a poofy, permish kind of hairdo that may have been popular in the 80s. Rachel is shocked, and Carl throws his hands up and is in between the two of them with the funniest droopy-faced look, looking disappointed, surprised, and exhausted that Rachel and Harriette will not be making up. Carl is leaning forward. He's leaning forward incredulously with the funniest look. What the hell is going on? Can't we just get some ice cream? As Rachel and Harriette are bickering, we see Carl defeatingly going to the kitchen. Carl gets coffee, and we see Mama Winslow near the coffee maker on the countertop, sewing, as one does. I mean, well, I don't know. I mean, was that a thing growing up with your older family members? I mean, I know my grandmother sewed, but on the countertop in the kitchen? All right.
Never in the kitchen, but yes, family members sewed, but I don't think I've ever recalled someone bringing a blanket into the kitchen.
Right. Like you sew in the living room. You could sew in your bedroom. My grandmother, I'm sure, did a lot of sewing in her bedroom, but the kitchen countertop, that is a very interesting choice. I think it was Mama Winslow that asked Carl if Rachel and Harriette made up, and Carl somewhat sarcastically says they were close, real close. And Mama Winslow just says, mm-hmm. All right, and we go into the next scene, scene 7. And Eddie comes down the stairs that usually heads toward the living room, and he has this brownish gray suit that is clearly too big for him. And then he has like a light blue greenish shirt. and some crocodile camouflage looking tie. What were you thinking about this fashion choice, Andrew?
I thought it was hideous. It looked ugly. It was offensive, deeply offensive, actually, is what I wrote in my notes here. And I do feel that Eddie should have been removed from the show like Shadow Judy. I hated it.
So you would have traded Eddie disappearing up the stairs in a heartbeat. Like Eddie instead of Judy disappearing up the stairs just because of that one fashion faux pas.
Yes, because this was a bad one. Like, there's been some cheesy fashion, but Eddie, I don't know what they were thinking for this look for the scene.
Yeah, and fittingly enough, Laura comes to greet him and says his outfit looks bad. Now, this was the time when people were saying, oh, you look bad, as a way to say you look good in a cool way. But you and I are truly thinking, no. Eddie literally looks bad in this outfit. And then Laura asks where Eddie is going and that he smells like he gargled Aqua Velva. And I had to look up Aqua Velva on Google, and it tells me it's both a cologne and an aftershave. Were you familiar with Aqua Velva prior to this episode?
Very familiar with it. My grandfather used it. My dad used it. My brother used it. And for my first school dance, they were like, you got to put some of this on. And it smelled terrible. And you can still buy it today and it still smells the same.
Oh, wow. So it's basically like another version of Axe where it's like, oh, yeah, this is what teenagers used to get girls into bed, but it just smells like ass.
Yeah, it smells like minty ass.
That is an interesting concept. Ass, which usually smells like hairy poo, but then with a minty flavor on it. Hairy but minty ass.
Yes. And you have a fart that's minty. There you go.
Oh my God. I can taste that minty fart just as you said that. I don't want to taste minty farts. I want to taste actual mints. You put a fart into it and it's like, whoa, what is this hot fucking gas coming out of my mouth?
Ugh, Jesus, John. Now I can taste it. Oh, that's bad.
Yeah, but technically a burp could be considered a hot fart if you think about it.
I mean, yeah, it could be, but at least you're getting like fresh juices from the fart, like not like old stale fart.
God, we should have a warning on this episode. Hey, we're going to talk a lot about farts and minty ass, so just hang on and be patient with us.
John, that is going to bring out a whole kink community of listeners that I don't know we're ready for.
All right. Well, Eddie tells Laura he's going over to Linda Fontaine's house to ask her out. And instead of the normal thing to do, which would be to ask someone out in advance on like the phone or at school, and then dress up to actually take that person out once they say yes, Eddie is just taking a chance here, dressing up in this hideous, offensive thing. Laura tells him he better go back upstairs first because he forgot his brain. Kind of with her on that. Then Laura says, Linda Fontaine is the prettiest girl in the school. No way she's going to go out with you, Eddie. I don't know if you had that kind of sibling relationship growing up where it was just all ranking and roasting rather than uplifting each other.
Yeah, I don't think my brother and I ever uplifted each other. We did lift each other and throw each other, but that was it.
Yeah. No, that's actually what I meant. It's physical uplifting, not emotional uplifting, just physical, raucous, violent uplifting.
Yes. We could have sworn we were wrestlers in our house.
All right, so Eddie tells Laura that Rachel's story told him a lot about women and that he figures Linda is waiting for a real man to come along, one who's not intimidated by her beauty, and that's him. Eddie refers to himself as Edward Stud Winslow. Laura asks him how much of that cologne did he swallow? And I feel like there's an instance where someone swallowed a bunch of cologne and either passed away or had some kind of disease. We have to look this up online and reference it for a later show.
I have to know. Did you swallow white diamonds and turn into like a mutant?
We go to the next scene, which again starts in the kitchen. Harriette is slicing carrots and not looking like she's in a good mood. She is clearly not in a good mood. Laura is somehow just watching her slice carrots like it's the most fascinating thing in the world. Carl comes down from upstairs and uncomfortably notices Harriette is not in a good mood. Carl does ask Harriette if she's made up with Rachel, causing Harriette to suddenly slice carrots aggressively. Be careful, Harriette. I got anxious because I remember I used to sell Cutco kitchen cutlery in the summer before I started my freshman year of college, Andrew. And there was a demonstration that I did in front of a good broadcasting friend of mine. And I was slicing tomatoes and I actually sliced my thumb pretty bad during this demonstration. Blood was everywhere. And him and I, the person I was demonstrating this to, like, we're both socially awkward people. So here I am with like this very bloody sliced open thumb. And I'm just kind of like, oh, okay, just give me a moment. I just need a napkin and we'll continue with slicing the tomatoes. Like it was just the weirdest thing ever. And we don't reference that moment. This good friend of mine attended my wedding recently, and we don't reference that moment. We just kind of like make it pass by as if it's like an average memory at the candy store.
You know what? It happened. It's something y'all experienced. Wow. I mean, that's a moment. I mean, it's a good selling point too. You'd be like, look, it cut clean to the bone. Like, look at that.
Exactly. Hey, this knife is so good, it almost cut my finger off. All righty. Rachel comes in from the exterior back with a frown once she sees Harriette. Carl greets Rachel and tries to lighten the mood by saying she's just in time for lunch. Rachel asks Carl to tell Harriette she'll be eating lunch in her room. Before Carl is about to say something, Harriette cuts in and tells Carl to tell Rachel if she's eating in her room, she better call for pizza because Harriette's food not leaving this kitchen. Mm-hmm. Yep, Harriette. I think to an extent, Harriette is basically both our moms. Like, the biggest thing that I was looking forward to when I left the house for the first time was actually being able to eat wherever the fuck I wanted to, because Mom was just not having me eating in my room.
Yeah, as soon as I moved out the first night, I ate pizza on my couch because I was like, I don't have to eat in the living room. I mean, at the dining room table, I can eat wherever I want. It was like the biggest freedom ever.
And liberating freedom that comes with it. So I encourage any 20-something-year-old who's moving out of home for the first time, eat pizza on the couch or the bed, see how it feels, and then you'll figure out all the saucy crumb mess stuff the next morning.
Yes, figure it out later, and then years down the line, you'll be like, okay, this is what a table's for. I get it.
All righty. Rachel tells Carl in an attitude to tell Harriette that is just fine with her. Carl is searching for words as Harriette and Rachel walk away. Laura comes over to Harriette at the kitchen table and asks if Judy and her fight. Can she have pizza in her room too? Harriette looks at her coldly and Laura says, no, it was just a thought. Carl comes over to Harriette and wonders why she's still upset with Rachel when the rest of her have forgiven her for the story. Harriette tells Carl Rachel didn't do a number on her because he was just portrayed as a tightwad and a blowhard. Carl rolls his eyes at this description. Harriette tells Carl she was portrayed as some tyrant in Rachel's story. Carl says he thinks Harriette and Rachel have let this thing get way out of hand, and it is now time to talk it out. Harriette says in a childish, frumpy way that she does not want to talk to Rachel. Carl tells Harriette he knows she's hurting, but she wouldn't be hurting if she didn't love Rachel so much. He doesn't know how Harriette and Rachel can let something like this come between them, and Carl knows neither one of them will be happy until they work it out. Carl pleads with Harriette again to work it out and gives her a kiss as he walks away, leaving Harriette to think about this. Harriette says childishly she doesn't want to work it out. And then we go to scene 9. Finally, somewhere other than the kitchen, we go to Rachel's bedroom where she depressingly picks pizza out of the delivery box. And Laura comes in to greet her. Rachel asks Laura if she wants some pizza, and Laura says no thanks, even though Laura was all about pizza in the room earlier. And I definitely would have said yes to the pizza. Come on now.
I want it because I like a saucy pizza, and I don't really care about the cheese and stuff. I would love to have the sauce be the first part of the bite.
Yeah, and also Saucy Pizza. What a great drag queen name.
Oh my God, you got a little saucy pizza. She's got a big old pepperoni.
Laura says she guesses Rachel and Mom are still not talking, and Rachel says this is about the worst fight ever. Laura tells Rachel to not let this get her down because she knows what it's like to be a sister, what with Judy and her fighting all the time. Rachel asks Laura if she says awful things to Judy. Laura says sure, because being a middle child has to have some perks. And it's true. My sister Natalie, she's the middle child. Natalie was known to have a very smart mouth as a kid.
And, you know, I'm not a middle child, I'm the baby. But looking at a 3-child family, I see it as like the first child, this was like the test run baby. Like we had to get through the experience of having you. The middle one, it's like, okay, we're a little tired. We know we don't have to do much. This baby's going to bounce back. And then the third child, you're like, it's the baby. So the middle child's like, well, I'm just going to do whatever I want to do.
All right, so Laura assures Rachel she never means the mean thing she says to Judy because she loves the kid. Judy comes in and asks if anyone has seen her doll, and Laura quickly tells her to beat it, you little rugrat, while throwing some pillow at the door as Judy leaves. Laura then looks back at Rachel with an evil smile. See, I wasn't really trying to hit her, but she has to knock before she enters. Rachel tells Laura she should apologize to Judy. Laura assures Rachel she will because no matter what happens between sisters, you don't let it ruin the relationship. And it was weirdly mature wisdom from a kid that Rachel is getting this advice from.
It really is. I mean, Laura's the know-it-all. She knew what to say in that moment.
And then we cue this melodramatic piano, sappy sitcom background music as Laura playfully throws the pillow she threw at Judy for Rachel to catch. Zoom in on Rachel thinking about what Laura said while hugging the pillow. Laura goes to Judy outside the room, and we find out Judy coming in to ask for the doll, and Laura throwing her out was a stage performance. The two planned so Rachel can hopefully make up with Harriette. Laura says to Judy she doesn't know how Mom and Aunt Rachel got through life without them, and they both high-five each other happily in that cheesy 90s sitcom way as they head down the stairs. I don't know if you got that feeling as well, Andrew.
I did. I got that little like cheesy feeling. You know, one thing that I thought about, and it didn't hit me until just now that we're talking about it. The cold opening is them getting pizza, essentially, after setting the table, and they're like, oh, we're going to get pizza. Rachel's eating pizza in her room, and Laura has also made pizza references. Is that where the cold opening, that's why they decided to make it about setting a dinner table and there being pizza?
Probably. There seems to be a thread. You might be right there. And then we go into our final scene. Rachel comes into the kitchen with tea to see Harriette sitting at the table. She comes over to sit with Harriette, who quickly gets up to be away from Rachel. Rachel goes to the counter where Harriette is sitting and tells her they have to talk. Rachel apologizes to Harriette for the story and says she never meant to hurt her. Harriette says it's not about the story anymore. Rachel says she's sorry about everything else too. Harriette asks Rachel if she believes she pushes her around and tries to control her life. Rachel thinks for a moment, nervously wanting to say the right thing, and says, okay, she doesn't feel that way. Harriette says she does too. Rachel then says she does feel that way. Yes, you're right, Harriette. Rachel says she doesn't know what Harriette wants her to say. Harriette says she wants her to tell the truth. Rachel says fine and admits that she feels like Harriette sometimes pushes her around. Harriette says stubbornly that she doesn't do that and just gives her advice. Rachel tells Harriette she may mean it as advice, but it comes off as giving orders, and that she feels Harriette does not respect her or feel like she's capable of thinking for herself. Harriette says that is not true, and Rachel insists it is true, and that ever since they were little girls, Harriette would always talk to her that way. Harriette insists that she has nothing but respect for Rachel, the type of person she is, her ability as a writer. Rachel asks, really? And then, again, we cue the melodramatic piano in the background. Harriette says, yes. And then she says something I've heard before, which comes off as more of an excuse than an apology. Harriette says if it seems like Rachel bosses her around, it's because she loves her and only wants the best for her. How many times have you heard that? Like, oh, if I called you fat, then sorry, but I was only trying to look out for your health.
I'm just trying to tell you you're going to end up obese. Like, what? This is not an apology at all.
Instead of just straightforward apologizing, they try to justify the morality of the hurtful thing that they said. And it's like, no, there's no justification. It's either a hurtful thing or not a hurtful thing.
Yes, 100% agree. It's that time of year. Some things like that are going to be said, and you've got to acknowledge the hurt. It hurts. I get that you want to come from a place of love, but that was not a friendly thing to say to me.
Rachel buys Harriette's bullshit apology and compliments Harriette as being strong and dependable, just like a second mom, but only younger, when seeing that Harriette takes that comment as an insult to her age. Harriette realizes that Rachel does not need her as a mother, but as a sister. Rachel says that would be fine. Harriette says from now on, when Rachel has a problem, it would be nice to talk about it face to face instead of putting it in a national magazine, which I kind of agree with. Especially if you're using real life people as inspirations for fiction, it's best to check with them first, and especially if you have personal issues with them, also best to resolve those before writing about it.
Yes, I 100% agree.
Rachel says fair enough to Harriette's request. Harriette wants Rachel to let her know if she's getting pushy. Rachel says okay, and then Harriette anxiously repeats the point to comically show that she is pushy. Rachel cuts her off to tell her she's being pushy at this moment. Harriette says, oh, it kind of sneaks up on you, doesn't it? Rachel asks Harriette if they're friends now. Harriette says yes, and they both hug relievingly. And then Carl comes out of the living room happily joining the hug. And I think we see this scene in the opening credits, don't we? Like when Carl is just like, oh my God, my wife and her sister are making up, yay!
Yes, it is definitely in the opening credits. And it's such a cheesy scene. It's so cheesy, Carl.
I know, but hey, that's what you want from a family sitcom in the late 80s, and to top it off, Carl with his horrible high top fade.
It's so bad. It's so bad.
Luckily, Reginald learned and just shaved his head off. And I think even today, like, he still has a shaved head. So he knew that he could not sport a high top fade like anybody's business.
He can't. And you know the thing, now I'm going to go back to Invincible. They gave him a high top fade in the cartoon as the animated character, and it still does not look good.
Oh my God, I bet. So clearly Carl coming in and hugging like he was spying on the conversation. Rachel is glad all of this drama is over and is glad the story didn't cause any more trouble than it did. And then cue Eddie hesitantly coming from the exterior back with shirt untucked, tie undone, and carrying his suit, looking like he went through something unpleasant, like some kind of big fight. And his shirt sleeve has been ripped apart by someone. Carl, Harriette, and Rachel are looking at him wondering what the heck happened. And Eddie is walking with a limp. So I'm guessing, all right, this guy really got beat up. Carl asks Eddie what happened. Eddie says he went over to Linda Fontaine's house to ask her out. And Carl then asks if she beat him up. And I'm assuming this is where Eddie says, no, her boyfriend did. And was that correct, Andrew?
You were very correct.
And to top it, her boyfriend was named Bubba.
Everybody who's named Bubba is a bully.
And also, I don't know. I mean, bullies also acting as the boyfriend of a popular girl. Is it a good look? I mean, maybe it's a usual look back in high school. I don't know. Tell me your experience with that.
100% a usual look, especially if like she was like the hot girl or the cheerleader. She typically had the stupid dumb jock boyfriend who was a bully. And the only thing, Bubba, I just feel like was in like tech club or something. Maybe he wasn't a sports player.
Eddie begs Rachel to leave him out of her next story. Carl puts his arm around Eddie and tells him it's about time to have a talk about women and guys named Bubba, and then smells Eddie and then asks if he took a bath in cologne. Carl does the woo hand wave thing because Eddie really stinks. And even that moment, that little moment is funny because Reginald just knows how to do comedy, whether it's subtle or outrageous. And then zoom in on Rachel and Harriette smiling and hugging as Carl takes Eddie away. We have the credits. There you go. The end. That is episode 3, season 1 of Family Matters, short story.
I love that these first 3 episodes have focused on the female members of the family. It's like they're just saying, hey, let's give you the ladies first, and then we're going to get into some guy drama too. One thing that it hit me now just thinking about it, Carl's ugly pink chair is back in the beginning of the episode, and he's sitting in it. I completely forgot to mention that. The pink chair is back. So now there's the couch. And in the previous episode, there was a brown chair with like a blue like pad on it or something. At the beginning of the episode, when they first go into the living room again, the pink chair is now back in that spot.
I did not notice that. Wow. A good eye for that. Good eye. But for you listening, hey, thank you for joining us for this recap. You can subscribe, rate, and review the delicious Recap Family Matters wherever you listen to your fine podcasts. Please do that. That helps other people find the podcast. If you have questions, comments, concerns, and if you're interested in recapping an episode with us, email us, thedeliciousrecap@gmail.com. That is thedeliciousrecap@gmail.com. Well, I'm looking forward to recapping season 1, episode 4, Rachel's First Date. That'll be our next recap. And the original air date for that episode, October 13th, 1989. Let's just say we're going to have a very notable, iconic character show up a lot sooner than he should be showing up.
I'm not going to spoil it, but when I was watching, I was like, did I just see what I thought I saw?
Oh, I had the same expression too when I saw who I eventually saw. So we'll definitely get into that next week. Let deliciousness ring.